What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to episode number 572 of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast, Hot Tags of the Week. I'm Tony Mango, joined by Callum Wiggins.
Tis I.
Tis indeed. And tis you listening to this. So we are going to run down the usual things that we do here, the rumors and gossip and trademarks and current events and TV recap and all the other things that we feel like talking about in the world of pro wrestling that happened in the past few days. And we invite you to do the same by leaving your comments below and telling us your thoughts on everything that we are talking about here and anything else you want to chime in about. And if you're over there on YouTube, then be sure to click on a whole bunch of those good things that you can click on there, like that like button and that share button and that join button, which gives you access to the same things as the Patreon that we have over on patreon.com/smarkoutmoment. You got the Darkcast, you got the Pick Your Poison tier, and if you want to help us out on the monetary side of things, with that little thanks button, it's another option there too. But even $1 a month goes a long way in helping support us. And then you can also pick up some merchandise on Redbubble and TeePublic. And of course, you could be following a whole bunch of different accounts that are out there. At least as far as currently, the Twitter is still up. I don't know what's going to happen when it comes to that, but we'll talk about that when it comes down to it. But yeah, any support that you guys give us is greatly appreciated, including just the fact that you clicked on this and that you're listening to it. So keep that in mind. You're already doing something awesome. But if you want to make sure we keep the lights on here, the monetary stuff is easily the best way to make sure that ends up happening. So, yeah, hot tags. Not the most eventful week, but, in the grand scheme of things, when we've had some absolutely chaotic weeks, sometimes it's good to not have a particularly eventful week considering the alternative. But we do still have some interesting things to talk about here. And I'm going to start things off with what we've started off the past few of these with, which is a quick recap of what's happening in the 2022 Champsgiving tournament, the 5th annual, I think, Champsgiving tournament. Yeah. This one is, if you could bring back a retired WWE championship, what would you bring back? And in the third round, we had the Cruiserweight Championship beat the $1 Million Championship. I was a little bit surprised about that one. And the Hardcore Championship beat out the European Championship, which means Cruiserweight against Hardcore is your finals. Kind of figured it would come down to these four in the final four, and I thought that the Hardcore had a good chance to be in the finals, but I was kind of 50-50 split on that Cruiserweight and $1 Million one. What do you think about this? Cruiserweight and Hardcore, you think that makes sense as those two that people would most likely be voting for?
Yeah, I would. I mean, that's the two that I probably would have lent towards, because they're ones that have specific divisions attached to them. They are specialty belts in the sense that you can actually utilize them, and they have a specific purpose to them. Like Hardcore are for the Hardcore guys, you defend them in hardcore matches. In the Cruiserweights, you have to be at a certain weight limit. The $1 Million Championship and the European Championship are just, the European title is just a lesser Intercontinental or a United States title. So it really doesn't hold much weight unless they do bring it back as the main championship in NXT Europe, whenever that doesn't happen. And I'm still holding firm. It's not going to happen. They said they were going to do it.
I have my reservations too. I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah. And the $1 Million title, even though it's a very good looking belt, it's just something they've sporadically brought in time and time again. Like, well, every now and again, just as it's always attached to a DiBiase. So I think that the other two titles would fit into being, like, I could see those two titles being brought back on a permanent basis if they go in a certain direction.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to go for bringing back a championship for just the aesthetic look of it, some people are, probably end up voting for like the $1 Million title, or maybe even some of the other belts that have already been eliminated in the tournament. But if you're going purpose, from the very start of this tournament, just the idea of the concept, I'm like, all right, I got a feeling most people are probably going to go for that Hardcore title. And it's a fun championship that they didn't capture the magic for with the 24/7 title. So that's another thing too, that, that's gone. It was still around when this tournament started, and now it's gone. So if you have any opinions about that, you want to vote for either the Cruiserweight or the Hardcore title, go ahead and vote. In the meantime, That will carry on throughout this next week. And with Thanksgiving coming up and all, I'm not going to be able to record something on. Obviously, we weren't going to be recording on Thanksgiving because that's, kind of ridiculous anyway. But that's also Thursday. And then Friday, I'm not going to be around to be able to record. So my original idea was going to be to reveal the winner on the hot tags of next week. But instead, next week, we're going to kind of combine the hot tags with the Survivor Series predictions. So I don't want to get rid of the Champsgiving tournament before Thanksgiving is done. So instead, we'll talk about it on the next one. We'll just carry it around for an extra 2 weeks. Currently, there aren't a whole lot of votes to begin with anyway, so that'll give some time for people to hop on there and vote on the finals, and we'll see what ends up winning between the hardcore and the cruiserweight. So go ahead and vote while you can. You can see that on the sidebar. You can find pretty much any different method on here, the menu nav bar, the homepage. There's lots of different ways to find the same content on Smark at the moment. I try to make it as easy as I can. So that's happening right now. And then we have all these other hot tags to talk about. Let's talk about the trademark side of things. Let's get into that. Femi is trademark from WWE. It's going to be a new wrestler name. I don't really know who necessarily, but hey, it's one of those NXT guys, pretty sure. That's fine. It's a name. I don't think there's really anything to deep dive on, right?
No. Is it one name or is it two?
Two. Oba, OBA, and then FEMI.
Okay. Because it's just odd because Obafemi is it's a Nigerian first name. Like as one word. So. So it's interesting that they've decided to just split that out. The only reason I know that is because there was a famous soccer player or football player called Obafemi Martins, who, I say famous, like he was never really a super big deal. He played in the Premier League for a little while for a couple of clubs that I was aware of, and so it just that's why I thought, that must just be a first name. Just decided, okay, they just decided to name someone Obafemi, but no, apparently they decided to split it in two. But
so it's kind of like somebody going with like Max and then their last name is Well.
Yeah, exactly.
Or John Uthen.
As I say, it could literally be any one of the new recruits they've got. Presume it's the way they've put it together. It seems like it would. Again, you don't want to just predict, but it sounds like someone who'd be on the bigger side just by that name.
He, looking up the person's name, Isaac Odogbeson. I don't know how to pronounce it or whatever. He looks like he's one of those bigger guys. He's a shot put athlete.
Okay.
That they had, Nigerian shot put athlete, 6'4", 275.
Yeah, maybe it's just me, but I always have a tendency towards like the people with the kind of shorter names tend to be bigger people.
Like Omas. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't remember any instance off the top of my head that ends up being somebody who's like on the giant, or I mean, not even necessarily giant, but like the big man side. Like the longest name I can think of right now is Odyssey Jones, but mostly it's Great Khali, Big Show, and whatnot. Less is more in certain ways. Obafemi, we'll see how good he is. Danny Palmer is coming into the mix now too. That's another name that they had put out there in the past, and seems like she's ready to go. But as far as another trademark goes, this is something that we have even more clarification on, and this is one of those more interesting topics that we have for this week. They clarified now what the NXT Deadline gimmick match is going to be of Iron Survivor Challenge. And the way that this is going to break down, there are going to be two matches, one men's match, one women's match. The winner ends up being the number one contender, not for the championship. And it is basically Royal Rumble meets Gauntlet meets Scramble meets penalty box stuff from the King of the Mountain match in TNA, where if you start the match, two superstars starting the match, not just one, because that would be really boring. Every few minutes, another person enters, and you get to the 25-minute limit mark, and that's the end of the match. In the meantime, if you score some kind of a pinfall, submission, disqualification, you get a point. And if you're the one that lost that, you get put in a penalty box for 90 seconds. And the winner ends up being the one who scored the most amount of points. This, in theory, isn't bad, but at the same time, I think for the average fan, it's way too complicated. And I'm going to be interested to see how many people get frustrated with it and how difficult it is to kind of keep track of, okay, well, the third person in there is in the penalty box, and now this person's going to come back in about 90 seconds, and then that person's in, and then how many points does that one have? Okay, well, then this person comes in late, so they have to score X amount of points over this amount of time, and I think it's a little overly complicated. I'm not sure I'm really going to enjoy this all that much. How do you feel about it?
So I like the King of the Mountain matches. I think that it had a certain charm about it, the idea of someone getting locked into a penalty box every time they lose a pinfall. But that was surprisingly even more simple than this is, because essentially, even though it's the weird reverse ladder match where you're actually hanging a title up rather than taking a title down, it's still pretty straightforward. You pin someone, they go in the penalty box, you become eligible to hang the title belt up. It's that's pretty much how it goes. This time you're going to have to be tracking people, how many pinfalls they're getting. Then there's going to be other people in the penalty box, and there's only going to be a certain number of people in the match at any given time. So it's going to take a while for people to get into the match. So yeah, it's overly complex, and I think the time limit and the need to count pinfalls and the time within penalty boxes and all this other stuff opens it up to a myriad of potential problems. And I say this with the best will in the world. I might enjoy the matches due to the chaos they provide, but I think that in at least one of those matches, something is going to go very badly wrong. And by that, I mean timing is going to get fucked up.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, and I don't obviously want to point fingers, but if it guns to my head, I'd say it probably will happen in the women's match.
Most likely, because the men that are in NXT do collectively, depending on who they end up picking, obviously, have more experience usually.
Yeah. Well, I'm mainly basing on the fact that it seems like, at least with the latest episode of NXT, they're building to have Indy Hartwell in that match, and if she's going to be in there, there's probably going to be something that's fucked up. So.
Hey, maybe it'll be Indy Hartwell with Lash Legend.
But I think that it could still be, they could still be a lot of fun, because there's going to be a lot of pinfalls flying around, bodies going all over the place, because it's a 5-way match still. And so there's an element of unfairness to it in the fact that there's only 2 people starting that could start getting pinfalls, but then again, if they pin one of the people, they're then waiting for 90 seconds until they get out of the penalty box.
Mm-hmm. Which in itself, it's kind of like, all right, well, then what do you do?
Yeah, you just stand around for 90 seconds and just wait for either the person to come out or the next entrance come in. I kind of have to see it in practice to know just how bizarre it ends up being, but just based on the rules and how long it took Shawn Michaels to explain it, and probably how many read-throughs he had to do of it in order to explain it and get that take all put together, I think it's going to be confusing at the very least.
I kind of feel like they would have been already, I mean, maybe it ends up being awesome just the way that it is, but it seems to me like they would be better off if they trimmed 1 or 2 of those ideas off of it. Like, maybe it's not whoever gets the however many points. Maybe it's if you have everybody start off the match, and if you take like a pinfall, you get in the penalty box, and that prevents you from getting the points. Maybe it's easier if just everybody starts, and then that way some people are like, oh man, I scored 8 points over the course of those 25 minutes, but this other person was only in those, instead of being in there for the 25, they were only in there for 18 because they were the one that I kept pinning, or maybe instead of it being the number of points, maybe you have the gauntlet kind of concept, but it's elimination based. You just, you pin the person, you take them out. And then that kind of makes it more just a regular gauntlet match. So I don't know. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of...
Well, you could do so. Maybe an easier way to do it would be like pins score you points, but if you are pinned, you lose a point.
So even then, like, maybe, yeah. Like I think that
there being in the penalty box.
There's probably a lot of different ways that this could be tweaked to be a lot better, and I don't know. I mean, I kind of I feel like it's gonna be a little bit messy to the point that that might even be the fun part about it. Is it might be like, holy shit, this match was terrible. You know?
Yeah, I mean, you do. At very least, it's good to give them credit for trying to come up with a new stipulation match.
Yeah,
because we kind of been sticking with the same ones, and again, you can't really beat classics like ladder matches or tables matches or things of that ilk. But you sometimes have to mess around a bit and try and play around the formula and see if it ends up going well. I mean, probably the first few King of the Mountain matches, they all thought it was a dumb gimmick, and some people still think it's a dumb gimmick, but I think by the end of it, those matches ended up being pretty good and well put together. So maybe this does work out a lot better than we're expecting. I'm always hoping that some promotion takes on the Aztec Warfare match or some variation of it from Lucha Underground, which was essentially just a Royal Rumble match, but with pinfalls and submissions. So you don't get... Well, you could get eliminated over the top rope, but you could also eliminate someone by pinning them or making them submit.
Yeah, even if you did like a 15-man version of that.
Yeah.
To just, I think
Lucha Underground they did like it was 20-man, or 20-man and 20 women. Well, not 20-man and 20 women, but it was in agenda, so you could have had, but it was 20 people. So yeah, they could do that for you've got plenty of people in NXT. You could definitely do that kind of match, and some people get eliminated super quickly, but you just build it around your top names.
Yeah, and people get caught with like a quick finisher or something.
Yeah. I kind of wanted to see that come in at some point in AEW rather than always doing like the casino battle royals.
Those casino matches are they've figured out a good system, I think, but it's still not Royal Rumble.
No, it's not Royal Rumble, and it's not. It's just a traditional battle royal. It's bits. Yeah, it's just people trying to find a little bit of a niche, which you can't blame them for doing, even if it's not. Right, there won't be anything that will be like the Royal Rumble again. So
yeah, and if you copy it, then everybody just says, you're copying that. And then if you do something too drastically different, everybody goes, why don't you do the Royal Rumble? Because it's a perfect concept, exactly the way that it is.
It would be good for NXT to do an NXT Rumble.
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking that they should always have some kind of lead in to the Royal Rumble where like maybe you do the NXT Rumble and the winner gets a spot in the regular Royal Rumble. And then, that's an episode of NXT. People would tune in for that. Check in and see who wins the spot in the regular Royal Rumble. You get a little mini version of that. 15 men or something. Yeah. 15 women for that match.
Yeah, it takes up half an hour at the start of the show and half an hour at the end of the show.
Yeah. I think that'd be good. So we'll see about this Iron Survivor Challenge. I don't like the name either. It's a little blah, but a couple weeks from now, we'll check out NXT Deadline, see what ends up happening. And I think next week is when they're going to start announcing who is going to be in those matches. But we can assume based off of just the names that they use on a regular basis. All right, like Roxanne Perez, Indy Hartwell. The other three, I don't know. Cora Jade, most likely. Maybe Wendy Chu. You got a couple other names that you can put in there. Alba Fire and... Isla Dawn could be in there. You got for the men, obviously you got people like Apollo Crews trying to go for the title. You got Von Wagner, Grayson Waller, maybe Carmelo Hayes if he doesn't win that North American title. Maybe he just jumps up to that level. There's a lot of options. And of course, we'll talk about all that stuff too. Another trademark thing here, Sasha Banks, or Mercedes Renato, she is trademarking a couple interesting things going on here with her Soulnado Incorporated. Mercedes Moné, Moné Talks, Bank Moné, and the Statement Maker. Kind of seems to me like this is if I leave WWE and want to take my name elsewhere, this is the name I'm going to go with kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, the one that stands out the most is probably the Mercedes Moné name, because that feels like an alternative ring name. If she does want to go somewhere else, that would be how she would classify herself, because it's not like if she was going into Hollywood, she would need to call herself anything other than Mercedes Soulnado.
Right.
So you just think that the only reason she would name herself that is that she wants to take on another moniker or ring name for, well, either a ring name or for some other aspect of, maybe it could be as a musician, because obviously she sang her own theme music, so maybe she wants to go in that direction. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like, this isn't Sasha Banks to AEW confirmed type announcement, but it is interesting that she's taking on these new trademarks.
Yeah, I mean, any of these could mean other things, but I would assume, you know, the Mercedes Moné name would be her ring name. Bank Moné, I don't know. I mean, I guess that's maybe a backup. I highly doubt Moné Talks would be the name that she would go with, but Statement Maker kind of seems like that's trademarking her finisher name, because, you know, Bank Statement, she can't go with that, but you go with Statement Maker. Okay. Or that's like a nickname that she goes with, the Statement Maker Mercedes Moné.
Yeah, that kind of works. I think, if you were going to take the assumption that this is all in-ring related, Mercedes Moné is obviously the ring name. Statement Maker is for the finisher. I'd say Moné Talks would be just a catchphrase.
Or like a talk segment, if she's able to do those, like Piper Spit.
Yeah. I'd say Bank Moné is probably in the same vein as that's, or it could be the name of like the song, a theme song, or something of that ilk. So they all have that connection to, well, they all have that Banks aspect to them as well, because instead of Banks, she's going Money instead, and obviously with Bank Moné, she's combining the two of them. So it does feel very, again, I don't want to just jump to conclusion because it just leads to people somewhat getting disappointed, but it does all seem to be pointing towards ring work. And I mean, I don't think this is necessarily AEW. I think it could be Stardom, or it could be something in Japan, because she has said that she wants to work Japan at some point. And there have been like some, I don't know if they've said it like explicitly, but there's been some like back and forth Twitter conversations where she's been in conversation with like Kairi Sane and stuff, or Kairi Hojo as she's now known. I think she's currently just known as Kairi rather than just taking on any surname. But yeah, I would not be shocked if she decided to might just spend a couple of months in Japan working and living there for a bit, and then come back and continue whatever direction I'm going to take.
And I mean, that could be something that fulfills both sides of it. If she ends up trying to take herself elsewhere and she's going with this Mercedes Moné name, she can work, you know, Stardom or whatever, and still find her way around to AEW. And then she just uses that name and she's built up a little bit more of name recognition with that.
Yeah, but that's the advantage of working for AEW for certain people, is the fact that AEW won't be as restrictive in terms of where she can work. And obviously they have a working relationship with New Japan, and New Japan owns Stardom, so that's an easy path for her to get to there. If that was again, it's a lot of speculation. Right now we have no idea what the trademarks are associated with, but it is interesting that she's making them. Maybe she just spent money to make trademarks to make everyone think that she's not going back to WWE when she is going back to WWE.
Well, it is interesting if you look at the descriptions for what she filed for. They're not classifying themselves entirely as professional wrestling. They are, for a certain extent, like one of them's entertainment services in the nature of live audio performances by an actor or musician. But there's also, where is it on here? The entertainment in the nature of wrestling contests, services, namely wrestling exhibits and performances by a professional wrestler and entertainer. But it's a lot of musician stuff. And then there are a lot of things like there's action figures, toys, hats, leggings, hooded sweatshirts, etc., coffee mugs, drink glasses, jewelry, decals, stickers, and all. So she's going for merch plus musician plus actor plus wrestling, which basically covers everything that she could possibly be into, because I highly doubt that she'd be like, all right, well, I'm going to trademark all these things and I'm going to get into like lawn care or, some kind of a health insurance service or something. Like, yeah,
No.
she would be an entertainer and then want to sell merchandise based off of her namesake and all.
It could be fashion label stuff as well.
Yeah, I mean, she could get into trying to make a whole brand off of that and everything. And it is kind of one of those things, though, that makes you go, oh, that's not a step forward in the idea of her just coming back to WWE. That's a step away.
I think a lot of people that are speculating that she's the extra person on the Bianca Belair team are setting themselves up for potential disappointment.
I think so, too. Especially because if they wouldn't have already had Mia Yim in there was a chance that it could have been both Naomi and Sasha. Now I think it's even less of a chance that it would be just one of the two. I'm currently working with the idea that it's Becky Lynch. And if it's not, that it's Beth Phoenix, I should say, not just like some random Beth. But that's kind of where I don't think it's going to be Dana Brooke. The people that think that that's the case, and she's just there to lose.
I'm still tying up to Candice LeRae in some ways. It feels like the most logical one.
Yeah, I mean, she makes a ton of sense. The only thing that I think gets in the way of that is the last I had heard is that she might possibly be injured. So I don't know if that's like a legit injury or if they just kind of took her out.
Well, last I heard of Becky Lynch, she was injured as well.
Yeah, but I think that she has been like on that recovery side.
You'd hope so. I want to see it back because she is great.
It's great, yeah. So I am currently predicting, if I had to, put my prediction out there, I think it's going to be Becky Lynch. But I would definitely put Candice and Beth way above Sasha filling in that role. So Sasha Banks being in the mix with Mercedes Moné, I mean, that's something to keep an eye on going forward. Let's talk about Kevin Kelly's new wrestling promotion, as far as trademarks and stuff goes. The American Excellence Wrestling is the name of it. And to get around it being AEW, they are capitalizing the X in excellence. So it's AXW instead, which is already starting off as me being like, all right, I don't know if you really need to necessarily go with that name, but it's a little hokey. It's a little, run down indie sounding to me with the capital X, and it's got to be specifically American Excellence Wrestling. I've said it a million times. I don't think everybody needs their own promotion, especially when we've got, I forget the name of it, but some promotion recently just like didn't pay anybody. And just, screwed everybody over and all. I mean, look, I'm going to be interested in checking it out if it ends up happening and they end up putting something out on there that would be interesting to watch. Just like I was somewhat interested in checking out that wrestling entertainment series, despite the fact that it seemed like it was all going to be garbage. And I'm interested in that Freddie Prinze Jr. thing if he ends up getting that off the ground. But I'm not ever really interested in these companies being like full-blown things. I don't think wrestling... What was it? Women's Wrestling Army or Wrestling Women's Army, the Maria one. Like, if you do one show a year, you do 2 shows a year or something. I don't know if you really need to be your own company. You think you'd be checking out American Excellence Wrestling?
Probably not regularly, but again, I'm happy that there are always places for wrestlers to work. So, yeah, I don't know if he has or what ambitions he has for the promotion, considering the fact that he is obviously still the lead English announcer for New Japan Pro Wrestling and is one of the best at it. So I wouldn't expect that he's going to be quitting his day job and putting all of his eggs into this basket. But it's good to at least try these things out, see if you can develop a niche audience and build yourselves up that way. But I imagine it's more likely just going to be another independent thing, running a few shows a year, and just giving some people an opportunity to work. I imagine with his links to New Japan, he might be able to get some people from there dates, and that would at least initially help build up its fandom, like with the New Japan audience. So maybe that's a quick way to give it a bit more of a boost of notoriety early on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you can get bigger names, it's going to be more successful than if you are working with the dregs that are out there. But it's a shame that there can't be kind of the best of both worlds going on here, where this isn't just my idea of like merging everything together, because I mean, not everything should be merged and all, but obviously WWE doesn't want to work well with these indie companies. They don't want to send a WWE guy to a show just for the sake of it, because what do they get out of it? And AEW, in a similar way, I mean, they are more likely to send somebody to another program. And then again, WWE's got Shinsuke going over to work an extra match elsewhere, so it's not unheard of. But you know, I mean, there's no benefit in you propping up another organization for a random show. And obviously those two companies hold the majority of the biggest names that are out there in pro wrestling. And then you get into Impact, and you get into NWA, and you get into New Japan and everything. And there are still big names on the indie scene that can draw an audience, and, you know, a respectable enough audience for an indie show. But every show that's like this starts off the same way that everybody would assume, which is we're going to have the best talent, we're going to have the best roster, it's going to be the greatest show possible. And then you inevitably see whether or not they can actually pull some decent names, or if it's going to go anywhere. And, you know, if you get a show that can get some big names and you can start something and then maybe do a couple shows a year, everybody gets a payday. It's not the biggest thing in the world. But if the goal is to be, you know, hey, we're the next WWE, or we're the alternative to the alternative, and we're going to beat out that AEW audience or something, that's where I always go, all right, you're setting yourselves up for failure. And we've seen how even like the Wrestling Entertainment Series can try to take like one show and have it not get off the ground. I'd like to see more of kind of a little bit what GCW does, where they have, you know, Game Changer Wrestling has these extra little shows that are, I don't know if they're technically considered part of the umbrella category of GCW, or if they're just like by proxy in there, or do you know how that works necessarily? If it's like, you know, GCW presents blah, 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 or if it's technically not a GCW show, all those extra ones that they run.
I think it kind of, even though I don't think they're directly attached to GCW, there is a case of, I know in the past where if you wanted to purchase shows on Fight TV, there's typically been a GCW collective where you buy all these independent shows as a bundle rather than having to buy them all separately. So I guess there is at least some affiliation with GCW across all of these, some of these other shows, like the Joey Janela Spring Break and all of those
FE and separate ones. Whatnot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, something like Fight, where you can collectively just kind of be like, all right, you know, here are all these indie shows all lumped in together, and we're all going to kind of work that deal. And I'd like to see a little bit more of somebody figuring out a way to kind of get that going, because I've seen some different ones in the past where people have had like, I think it was like the PWTV or something was the name of one of them, and then there was like the Pro Wrestling Network or whatever that I know like old time wrestling was part of and everything. And yeah, I just kind of want to see them all lumped together in a way that would be the most efficient way for the people possible to check these out. Because I'm not going to mostly watch almost any of them. But if I were going to, the last thing I would want to do is to try to figure out, okay, how do I figure out how to watch it? How do I get the information? I got to follow a million different accounts. I got to go on, the whole laundry list of calendar stuff or whatever. So we'll see. I mean, yeah, maybe it ends up being something interesting to watch down the line. Maybe it ends up not even manifesting like the WES or something. I don't know, but I don't like the name. At least I can say that. American Excellence Wrestling with a capital X. A little early 2000s. We're gonna call it the Extreme with the capital X, and if it ends in an S, we're gonna change it to a Z. That kind of thing. It's giving me that vibe. If we're talking about indie stuff and outside air promotions from AEW and WWE, let's talk about NWA. Let's talk about the new NWA champion.
So, yeah. I mean, might as well This was all over Twitter, which is going to die soon anyway. So this might be the last thing that the NWA ever gets known for on that platform. But
which is
yeah,
great.
so they had a triple threat match at Hard Times 3 between the defending champion Trevor Murdoch against Matt Cardona and Tyrus, and they decided to go with Tyrus winning the NWA Championship, and this has just been met with pretty much universal disdain in the fact that Tyrus, even at his peak, was not a good wrestler, certainly not a main eventer in any capacity. His peak was dancing as a dinosaur, as a fake dinosaur on episodes of Raw, and he is obviously politically complicated or complex, should we say, with his spot on Fox News. So I assume they think that gives them a decent amount of notoriety in a group of people that I can't speak for everyone, but I personally would not want to be well known for, or would not want my audience to be coming from the same platform as them. But to each their own. I don't want to criticize anyone's political views. But I would criticize the fact that he's a terrible wrestler and he's in terrible shape, and he definitely should not. I mean, if you're in the ring and you're making Trevor Murdoch look slim and good, then you really are hiding to nothing. And I just can only believe that they've made him champion just to stir up controversy and get people talking about the promotion, even if it's not in a positive light.
It kind of seems like that's the case, doesn't it? Because it's like, oh, well, he'll be able to hold that title on the Fox programs that he's on. And that general buzz idea that we've talked about before about, like, you know, well, it doesn't matter if they're booing or cheering. It only matters if they're talking about it. That'll get us some press beyond the Nick Aldis bad press, at least.
Yeah. I think that was even like a slight towards him. So it's like, oh, you thought you were special with that belt. We're going to give it to this lump of shit. just have him hold the title instead. Like, just imagine he's holding the title that Harley Race and Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes and all of those legends held. And now, and to be fair, he's probably not the worst guy or the least famous guy to ever hold that title. Like, there was a really dying time in the early 2000s where just like nobody was thinking or talking about the NWA. That was a time where a guy like Rob Conway could become the NWA world champion. But I think that this is the lowest it's been since the quote unquote revival of the promotion, and like a promotion that pretty much started to taper off and die a couple of months after it relaunched. Like, it had a good few months where people were talking about, so, oh, this is a really interesting new dynamic, and they're doing the old school stuff but doing it in a bit of a new way, and so I'm interested about it. I mean, I really enjoyed the first couple of months of Power. I was actually watching fairly regularly. And then, like, you fall off because other things start getting your attention, and then you just hear all the horror stories. And Billy Corgan feels more out of touch than ever at the head of this. I mean, he's made Tyrus the world champion, but all the stuff that he was talking about, the not doing another all-women show because there's not enough women that know how to work the quote-unquote NWA style. And then there's that clip going around of Tyrus trying to do a big splash off the middle rope.
Oh, God, yeah. That's terrible.
He lands on his feet, does a bit of a roll because he can't even stand to just land, like, do a bump on the mat. And it's just absolutely atrocious that this guy is the representative of your promotion. If this guy's a representative of promotion, your promotion is dead and you just don't know it yet.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, like, you scroll back to the list of different champions that I've had over the years, and I mean, this current modern era of NWA is obviously nowhere near the way that it used to be. I've never been a fan of NWA to begin with, so I can't be like the good old days that I used to watch, because I didn't watch any of that shit. But I mean, there's a stretch of like this indie kind of, Adam Pearce and Colt Cabana group that they're just basically, it's happening for the sake of happening and all. And you have that era before that where you've got like the TNA side of, Christian and Sting and Abyss and Jeff Jarrett and Raven and AJ Styles and all, which is like, okay, well, that seems like that's going somewhere and all. And you got before that the groups like the Steve Corino, Dan Severn and all, Chris Candido. Look, it's in the 90s. It's at a time frame that is not very NWA specific because everybody's in WCW or everybody's in WWF. But even somebody like myself who has no kind of admiration for the NWA in the sense of being like, the classic thing is, but I hate the fucking championship. Like the belt itself, I think it's one of the most disgusting looking titles. I really don't like the, you just have a couple of the Canada and Australia and Mexico and Japan and the United States. And it's like, it can't be from anywhere else. You got to get somebody from, I don't know, Spain. Can't win this. But at least when somebody like an Aldis was champion, I felt like there was a reason for it that was trying to take it back into that old school side of things. And then when you give it to somebody like Cardona, I go, all right, well, you're trying to tap into that market that is getting real popular with that GCW type crowd. And you're trying to play into like the AEW side almost, like the guys that are not in WWE because they want to do something that's different. And that's one of your figureheads. I don't understand it with Tyrus. He is way past his prime, which was what, 2000, God, when was the Funkasaurus thing? 2010?
Yeah. Well, it would have been 2011 or 12. Well, yeah, about 2011, 2012, because he was in the second or third season of NXT. Well, not third, obviously, because that was the women, but was he second or fourth?
I think he might have been in the second.
Yeah.
As like the non-Funkasaurus type.
Yeah, when they would, and then they did all those video packages presenting him as a monster, and then they decided to turn him into the Funkasaurus for a laugh.
Right, because that'll get him over. And then, yeah.
It doesn't matter if it gets over as long as it makes Vince McMahon laugh at the time.
Good song, though. But yeah, I mean, you're going from Trevor Murdoch over to Tyrus. Trevor Murdoch, of course, his prime was around that 2007 mark or whatever. And that was like, that's not something to really look back on all that fondly to begin with. And I thought it was funny. He recently said he had asked Vince, like, what is it that you don't like about me or whatever? And Vince said that he hates his flabby body or something. And I'm like, yeah, what changed out of that? Like, But I look at the Trevor Murdoch and Tyrus thing and I go, okay, you don't have any bigger names you can sign. And you're really working with not much here. Look, They could both kick my ass. That's not one of those things that people think that they can like, well, you could do better. No, of course not. But I'm not trying to be a wrestler.
I don't get the opportunity to kick my ass if I run fast enough.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a thing. If NWA wants to try to market itself these days more as being like the Southern wrestling, we're going to go full into it, even being part of Fox News side of things. Look, it's a strategy. It's not one that's going to appeal to me, but there is a little bit of a market out there for that kind of, I don't know if I want to use the word separatist or whatever type movement, but like the idea of like, no, we're going to go and we're going to do our own secessional wrestling thing. We're going to make it the way that it used to be and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, maybe it ends up boosting something, but I highly, highly doubt it. At the very least, I can tell you there's not a single person that I know, even the people that are more into indie wrestling and more into old school wrestling or anything, not a single person has chimed in about this and said anything positive. It's only been negative stuff. Even the people that have said more positive things about Trevor Murdoch, where they've been like, yeah, I mean, Trevor Murdoch is still better and all. It seems like it's just another downgrade. So See how long he ends up lasting. It seems like the average that they've been having these people as champions have been around that 130-day mark or so. 167 for Murdoch, 119 for Cardona, 154 for Murdoch. So 100-something days from now, maybe we'll see. But it is a thing. So take with it whatever you want. Let's talk about another card update to AEW's Full Gear 2022. This is taking a match off the card and then adding one to the 0 hour. And it's a byproduct of a couple different things. One of them being Ricky Starks being injured and kind of pushing everything back a little bit further. But the Starks and Lance Archer match that is happening tonight on Rampage is going to settle who is going to be facing Brian Cage, and the winner of tonight's match is going to go on tomorrow night to do that in the 0 hour. And the Ethan Page finals is no longer on the Full Gear card. That's going to happen next week on Dynamite, which I think is a very, very smart strategy for a couple different reasons. One being these shows are too long, and if you're going to take a match off the card, this is one of the ones that you can realistically take off, put it on Dynamite, and have it be something that people would be interested in to watch for Dynamite. It's not like you're taking off the main event. You're not taking, I mean, that would be good for Dynamite too, but priority should be the pay-per-view. You're not taking off a match and then just saying, well, we're not going to do it. So that's another thing. And there's nothing that really needs to necessarily happen at Full Gear about this Eliminator thing. Putting it off a few days and doing it on Dynamite doesn't hurt it. It's not like Winter's Coming is happening on Dynamite. This week, I mean. I think it's a good strategy. And I'm all for doing that buy-in thing and then kind of leading into it that way. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good move. I can understand people's concept of it would be a really good quote-unquote babyface story if Ricky Starks had to essentially wrestle all 3 matches in the tournament in 2 nights. Like, beat Lance Archer on Rampage and then beat... what's it? Beat Brian Cage. Yeah, beat Brian Cage on the buy-in and then have to wrestle Ethan Page on the show, because if he wins, it's a great babyface story, and if he loses, well, he had 2 matches in the last 2 nights, and so you can understand why he would fail to beat Ethan Page. But as you say, it's the right move in making sure that Dynamite's a bit more, I would say must-see, but it adds a match with stakes to it. So that immediately makes it more important, or means that you're more likely to want to watch it because you want to see who ends up winning the final and who's going to get the first, or either the first title shot at MJF or the next title shot at Jon Moxley. Our winner is coming. So yeah, I'm all for it. And I know you're saying like, yeah, these shows are too long, and so it's good that they've taken that match out of it and only put it on the 0 hour, because otherwise, like, if you don't want to watch 0 hour, then if you just watch the main card, then it means it's a little bit shorter, or at least it would be if they hadn't added 2 other matches to the main card.
Did they do that?
well, you know what that you've watched Dynamite, right?
Oh, I thought you meant on top of those.
No, not on top of the 2 ones.
Okay. That's why I was like, oh, come on. If they're just doing
as of Tuesday, they have announced 2 other matches that are going to be on the main card. I mean, to be fair, we did talk about them because we were very clear that we knew that these 2 matches were likely to happen, but they have officially announced that at Full Gear, there's going to be a triple threat match for the TNT Championship between Wardlow, Samoa Joe, and Will Hobbs, and it's just for the TNT title. It's no title unification or anything like that. And then they're also doing the trios match for the trios championship, Death Triangle defending against the Elite. So yeah, they've added those 2 matches, but I think so. It's 10 matches on the main card, and I think that's fine. It's still gonna be long, but I think that's reasonable enough.
Depending on how long some of them go too, because like the Jade Cargill match, I don't think it's going to go 15 minutes.
No, and I don't know how long they're going to plan on doing Saraya versus Britt Baker. I don't think the triple threat match is going to go super long.
Probably not really, really long. Maybe about like that 10-minute mark or so.
Yes, something like that.
There's also a chance that maybe they end up cutting the acclaimed match because now Anthony Bowens is wearing a sling. So I mean, if that ends up happening, then who knows?
I think maybe I'm just giving too much credit. I think they would probably have announced by now if that match was off. I think that they're just selling the shoulder injury because he's really good at selling that stuff.
That could be the case too. But it wouldn't shock me if they announced a kind of an adjustment on Rampage.
Yeah, that could definitely be the case if he is bad enough hurt. But yeah, there's other directions they could go. Certain matches might not necessarily go super long. So I think the only matches that will be given like a good amount of time are obviously the main event. I think they'll give Storm and Hater some time, just because it was your biggest women's title at the moment. Well, Thunder Rosa is on the shelf, so you're gonna give that some time to give them some time to work, and they'll probably have the better match out of all the women involved. So you want to give that a bit of time. The trios match will get a lot of time if they want to.
Definitely, yeah.
That match could rule. That could definitely be the show stealer. I think Jungle Boy Luchasaurus will probably get a decent amount of time. But then again, I said that about the
the Jungle Boy and Christian one. Yeah.
Yeah, but well, to be fair, I didn't expect that one because Christian was injured.
Right.
I knew Christian was injured, but I expected it for the Will Hobbs and Ricky Starks match, and they only got like 6 minutes. So who knows? But yeah, I think you're still looking at a 4-hour or so main card. So strap yourselves in, everybody.
Yeah, I mean, Tony Khan did say that he is taking into consideration the criticisms that the pay-per-views are ending at too late of a time. So I do think he's going to kind of tighten it up a little bit. And maybe that's even one of those decisions too, is he's just like, look, all right, I can't have 13 matches on the main card. I got to kind of pick and choose. Not everybody gets on the card. Not everybody gets a chance to, let's spend 10 minutes screwing around Danhausen, and then let's spend 5 minutes doing this, and then let's have these video packages and all. And even if you just take the video packages out of it and you just have them on the pre-show, the way that it kind of should be, then that already kills at least a half an hour, you would think. And that could be a big difference maker. Sometimes that half hour is the thing that drags it just past too long. Look at WrestleMania, when we had the women's match didn't even technically start until after midnight, so it was technically the next day. So, I mean, that's the adjustments that come with that. On the Dynamite side of TV recap, outside of those announcements, there really wasn't anything going on. Like, Strickland beat Bowens, but that's just a match for the sake of continuing on that feud. Castagnoli and Danielson beat Jericho and Guevara. That's just a match to continue that feud. The Saraya promo stuff, Joe's promo, etc. There really wasn't anything that stood out to me on Dynamite. What about you?
Well, it was very much the next week's the pay-per-view, so we're just gonna every segment has to be related to a match on the show. And I don't think there was anything like mind-blowing, but it was all just, I'd say, competent booking or building towards each matches. So you had Tony Storm in a match and had a stare down with Jamie Hayter. You do the Wardlow and Joe and Hobbs pull apart. You have the main event segment with MJF coming back and beating up the members of the firm to, I guess, save Jon Moxley, but not really save Jon Moxley, just to make sure that he's healthy enough to defend the title against him at Full Gear. So it's kind of, at least at the time being, it's cementing the babyface turn. So we'll see whether it does end up sticking in that direction, or there is some swerve in and not Strickland, but another swerve in the main event. The thing that was most noteworthy to me was Britt Baker's promo. That she had like a backstage one where was a 100% babyface promo.
Yeah.
Where she talks about how this is her house that she's built, and she paid respect to Saraya going through her injuries and the life that she's led and all the troubles that she's faced and overcoming the addictions and all that stuff, and commended her for all that, but says that just because she was in WWE, well, not in this term, but essentially saying just because you're in WWE doesn't mean that you're a bigger star than I am, because I am the star that made this company what it was. I started as a timid performer and ended up being the diamond of this women's division, and you're going to find out that this isn't your house, it's my house. It was a very, very earnest babyface promo, and Paige and Saraya's promo in response to that was essentially, I'm done talking, I just want to kick your ass. And that's, again, it's not set in stone, it was a double turn, but the double turn now feels even more likely than it did last week.
Yeah, because it's hard not to look at Baker's promo and not think that she has exactly valid reasons to say what she said. Very much, look, I respect that you paved the way for me and all these things you've gone through, but fuck you for being a bitch. And then you're like, yeah, you know what? Kind of, I agree with that. Saraya just kind of shows up and has an issue with Baker. Like, Baker didn't start this, Saraya did. So, I'm kind of in that same boat that I wouldn't mind a double turn. I think that could be pretty interesting. And then you can keep Hayter as the heel between the whole Baker and Hayter eventual split.
And that would also lead into the idea of potentially aligning Hayter and Saraya together.
Right, and that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the only other noteworthy thing which came about, there was a trios match for the trios championship prior to the announcement that the Elite were coming back at Full Gear, between Death Triangle against the combination of AR Fox and Top Flight. First of all, good to see Darius Martin back in the ring. Hope that it lasts longer than his previous 2 or 3 times that he's made his returns to Dynamite. And there has been, since then, news has gone around that Tony Khan has offered AR Fox some kind of contract. So AR Fox is a really good worker, like a really good, like just dynamic indie worker. He's someone that I'm most familiar with because he did some work in Lucha Underground for a while. We had a long feud with Killshot, who that was his name in Lucha Underground. That's actually Swerve Strickland. That was just the character that he portrayed in Lucha Underground. But yeah, I think that AR Fox is a good worker. He definitely fits into the style. He obviously probably will never be like a top guy or world champion, but it's always good to have a decent level worker that can appear in Dark and Dark Elevation matches or put some top guys over and have good matches with them.
I mean, I'm not too familiar with him, but I liked what I saw. And you got to kind of freshen up the roster a little bit here and there. If you could see somebody who's available and you can pick them up and put them in the mix, why not? I see no reason why not.
He's quite a veteran. I think, just checking that, he debuted in 2007. So he's been wrestling like 15 years. So so safe pair of hands, essentially. Just someone that is just competent. It's not like he's an upstart. He's just there he'll be like a Matt Sydal or someone like that. He's not there. He's there. He's earning good money, and he's there mostly to take pins against bigger names or guys that they're trying to push.
And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all from Dynamite that stood out to me. Let's talk about the Raw side of things. Get into even more babyface Seth Rollins. More than anything else at this point. It's pretty...
still weirded out by that. It just doesn't feel right because you know that Cody's there.
And the fact that it's just it just happened, like it didn't feel like a natural transition to me. It felt like they did a few things to just go, look, we're going to speed this along and we're just going to go with whatever. And now he's a babyface going forward. That's the end of it. As opposed to it being like, a storyline where, I don't know why this is the one that made me think of it, but like MVP goes on a losing streak and then you start gaining a little bit of sympathy for him and then he ends up doing something. Why add that one out of all the examples for me? But, Stone Cold Steve Austin you start cheering for him and then he starts becoming more of a babyface and whatever. And this is just sort of, look, Lashley's a heel, Rollins is face, we're flipping it, go with it. And somebody like Mustafa Ali really gets screwed over in this feud because he is just there as the punching bag to put Lashley over in the process of this. He's getting tossed around like crazy here. So I felt bad for him. But
he just got beaten up. But like Lashley just tossed him around because he was just going to try and get a match with Rollins. Again, it's a bit of like nonsensical BS because he comes out and says that he wants his title shot for the US Championship. He said, well, you could have had it last week, but then you just got yourself disqualified or attacked Rollins before the bell and prevented yourself from actually having the match with him. So, and now he's just coming out and saying, "Well, I demand a title match." I said, "Well, you could have had it last week, buddy. You blew it." And now he's just taking out his frustrations on Mustafa Ali until he does get the match with Rollins. But yeah, and then, well, I guess one of the main talking points for Raw, there's a few talking points, but one of the main ones is what they've done with Theory now. So they did this backstage promo with Austin Theory where he, I guess, tried to did his best job of explaining why he cashed it in.
If you can call it that. I felt so sad about that because it did kind of boil down to I wasn't going to win it anyway.
Yeah, it's the whole idea of like, I could have cashed in on Roman, but Roman's never here, and if he is here, the Bloodline's always around. And I tried to cash in before, but the Bloodline stopped me, and then I tried again. Lesnar stopped me, and I tried again. And Tyson Fury stopped me. So I decided, Rollins is there. I want to be US champion again. I'm gonna try and take it, and then I get screwed over. And he obviously, what you do, a guy who's at rock bottom, you put in a match with Dolph Ziggler. And so he has a match with Dolph Ziggler, and he doesn't win the match, but he, snaps and beats up Dolph Ziggler, destroys him. Then he comes out later in the night and takes down Seth Rollins. And so he's going into a feud for the US title, the one that he couldn't win, even with a completely beaten up and broken Seth Rollins.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people are praising this, and at least it's showing that they're not completely giving up on Theory, and they're using this as a catalyst for character change. But I just feel like I've seen this a lot of times before, and it still doesn't mean that it's completely doesn't change how nonsensical this booking is.
I know Rob was saying that he was feeling very positive about it. I forget exactly what he had said in the chat, but it was something like, "This is exactly what they needed to do, and I'm on board with it." I am very hesitant to believe this is going to work out. It is better than nothing. I mean, I had thought that there was a chance that they could continue to bury him even more, especially since Rollins started off the night being like, "What a dope fucking moron Theory." I'm like, oh no, we're going to turn it into everybody shits on Theory. They did offset some of that, but I think that this is very clearly the writers and creative team speaking through characters in a lot of ways. Because, I mean, that thing that Theory said, it was basically, "Look, everybody, I wasn't going to beat Roman, so I needed to get rid of the championship because they didn't know what the Money in the Bank, because they didn't know what to do with it." You might as well have just had a little, to go with the story, kind of text on the screen, the way that they have, like, sometimes that'll be like the part of whatever has been recast with, that kind of thing. Just explain it that way, because they basically wanted to say that. They wanted Triple H to go out there and go, "Look, go with it." And attacking Rollins at the end, to a lot of people, is going to make Theory look like, okay, well, he lost the previous week, but he got the whatever. I very quickly had said last week, if they think him just beating up Rollins balances that out, it doesn't. And it doesn't, to me. Not going back on that whatsoever. I still agree with that. But I think a lot of people are assuming that Theory's going to win that United States title. And that'll be like, okay, well, they built him back up and he won it. I don't think he's going to win it. And then when you skip to, if it's Rollins versus Theory at Survivor Series, for instance, or if they do a triple threat with Bobby Lashley or a fatal four-way with Mustafa Ali, I think Rollins just retains. And then what do you do with Theory? Because then he's lost again.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I can really speculate on it, because they're essentially, there's a positive in the fact that there's now multiple challengers chasing the United States titles. That makes it feel a bit bigger, and there are top guys associated with the belt. We've got Rollins is holding it, and Lashley's going after him, and Theory being involved in that, I guess, makes him feel around about on that level. But like you say, it feels like the belt's staying on Rollins for a while because of the whole Cody situation. But maybe the Cody thing's being dropped completely because Rollins is now babyface. So I don't know, and I presume that even if they do give theory, the United States title, it doesn't feel like it's going to mean as much. If it was his first time winning the title, then that would be something.
Mm-hmm.
But he's already held it. And it's not like that reign was particularly memorable or prestigious. He just got destroyed by Lashley after a month or two after winning it. So I don't know. The jury is still very much out on whether they can salvage this whole situation.
And I think a lot of it has to do with what they plan on doing for WrestleMania too. Because
it feels like Lashley and Lesnar.
Yeah, Lashley and Lesnar seems like they're going to just pick that back up. And the criticism that I had before was they're just doing it again, and then they're just going to do it again. That whole thing. We'll get into that when we have to talk about that another 15 times. But it doesn't seem like Lashley is going to be in that United States title hunt for Mania. So that's why I'm kind of assuming, hey, Rollins is just going to retain going forward and whatever. Theory and Rollins and Mustafa Ali, I highly doubt is in their plans for what they're planning on doing for Mania at this point. They probably have a few matches locked down or some basic ideas of things, but one of the topics we'll talk about here, and we'll come back to it in a minute, is even just with the Kevin Owens thing. Even Survivor Series is going to have to change potentially, but the Rollins thing with Cody seemed like that was going to be one of those go-to things, and we had plenty of discussions of, maybe the belt's going to get taken. One of the belts is going to take it off of Roman Reigns and go to Rollins, and then Cody can win that, whatever. Maybe it's United States title, whatever. I don't know about what they plan on doing with some of these guys, because if they plan on doing Cody versus Seth, the babyface thing doesn't work. If they plan on doing like Cody wins the United States title from Austin Theory, I don't know where they're going to go with that. And then where do they go with Rollins? And then it's kind of all, I don't know what the puzzle pieces are going to end up connecting with. And that makes me worried that there isn't an actual picture that they're working on. They're just sort of trying to connect things that maybe even go to different puzzles, So I'm hesitant to really trust that it's all going to work out when I don't have any kind of proper indication of their plans. But then again, they've made some good decisions too, so got to give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. But they had some other things on Raw that were kind of interesting. Some good, some bad. One of the things that I'm feeling very underwhelmed with was the big OC and Judgment Day thing is going to end in a one-on-one match between Styles and Balor.
I want to take a little bit of a lap of honor for this, because I did say that they're going to do Mia and Rhea Ripley being added to the WarGames match.
It seemed like it was going to be one of those potential options. It just kind of felt like you're going to screw over the three guys on those two other things without it,
Yeah, but here's the thing, Tony, and I think I've been saying this as well before. Triple H is overrated as a booker. Trying to end it. I guess the concept is that even though it made sense to do a 4-on-4 or some kind of configuration of a intergender match, realistically, the only match people would want to see is Styles versus Balor 1-on-1. Like, that's the best match you can put on out of all of the component parts involved. So it doesn't surprise me that's what they're doing, because I think they're trying to recapture the magic of a few years ago when they had that match at TLC.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and it's like leader of Bullet Club versus leader of Bullet Club, and they can tell the whole story of that. But yeah, it seems odd. I assume they'll do the 4-on-4 or some version of that on a Raw leading up to it, or after it even. I don't even know if this is going to be the definitive end of the feud.
I had said leading into, I don't remember if it was all the way leading into SummerSlam, but it might have been even then. I know at the very least with Extreme Rules that I was just like, there are too many pay-per-views over too long of a stretch of time that they are trying to thin out for this to all work. And if you look at the way that they booked Extreme Rules and the way that they booked Crown Jewel and the way that they are booking Survivor Series, it very much hits home for Clash at the Castle too, as well with that. It might have been Clash at the Castle. It might have been the first time I was really bringing this point home, but even dating a little bit back to SummerSlam in some ways, I really feel like you could have done a gimmick match at Extreme Rules between Balor and Styles, or the two other guys and two other guys or whatever, and that could have been the end of it, and then you could have moved on this feud. Or if you wanted to do that at Crown Jewel, the way that they had that match at Crown Jewel that was pretty purposeless because it didn't even include the Mia Yim thing, that could have been the end of the feud right there. Then that would have been fine. And now that they're at WarGames, you can't do like Balor against Styles in a last man standing match or something because it's already going to just encroach on the WarGames idea. So it just feels like it's a match for the sake of a match, and that's the end of that. And it seems like this whole thing was dead in the water to begin with. And that feud goes back to the road to WrestleMania. Styles and Balor and the Judgment Day and Edge, and it's almost a year.
Yeah.
And this is what it's going to be like. Okay. Because it's either this or it's not. And, that's pretty obvious. But, like, it's either it ends with just a match between Styles and Balor, which is very underwhelming. I mean, the match will be fine, but we've seen it before. And there's no hook to it. Or it's just a match for the sake of continuing this feud, and then we fill in the shit after that. Which is just like, okay, well, then don't do it. Like, just end the feud early, or end the feud on the Raw, whatever, and put some other people on the card. Like, maybe, I don't know, maybe we figure out confirmation of Gunther having the World Cup challenger or whatever. Maybe that gets booked for Survivor Series. Maybe we do confirm a United States title match for there. Maybe we put something in there for some other titles or something. Maybe we set up other feuds that are interesting. This doesn't do it for me. And disappointed on that end, but I'm curious where this one goes. The Johnny Gargano, Miz stuff, that's all been a pretty awful feud for the most part, but they're going back to the well of Dexter Lumis is going to have a match with the Miz, and if he wins, then he gets the contract, and then he ends up getting paid, which is a terrible storyline. Even that, I think you could have put that on the Survivor Series card, and it would have been a little bit more interesting to me than Styles and Balor. I know in ring, it's not going to be the same, but still. That's just kind of textbook. Dexter Lumis is going to win. You move on. How do you feel about the Baron Corbin stuff?
Well, you're asking me how I feel about Baron Corbin segments. A Baron Corbin segment involving JBL, and then them playing cards and cheating in cards with Akira Tozawa, and then having a match and beating Akira Tozawa. Yeah, I'm so super interested in it.
And then Tozawa tweeted out, "Thank you," with his ring gear laid out. Some people are taking that as like, oh, is Tozawa gone? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe they are just kind of not having him be this sort of character anymore or something. But it was a thing. It happened on Raw. That Matt Riddle stuff with Elias is continuing and Alpha Academy. Whatever. Yeah. We talked about the idea of the potential extra person in there for the women's match because we don't have that information yet. We also don't know who's going to be the extra person in Drew McIntyre and the Brawling Brutes and Blank against the Bloodline, because, to go back to a point from earlier, Kevin Owens suffered an injury. And the only report that I've been reading about it is that he is not moving around well. But another thing had said that he should be on SmackDown. So this is make or break it tonight, I think, for some pretty interesting things going forward. I have been saying I think Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn against the Usos at WrestleMania makes a lot of sense. There is the option that if they can do the Paul brothers against the Usos, that can happen down the line. And one of the stories coming out this week is that Logan Paul might be ready for WrestleMania, that his injury is not as bad as they thought that it was going to be. Whereas with Kevin Owens, we don't know what's happening with that yet. If he pops up on SmackDown tonight and they do any indication that he is going to be joining that team against the Bloodline, I think that it turns out his injury is not as bad as they were expecting to. And then that's good. Still don't know you would really want to risk him being in a WarGames match after that. But yeah, I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I'm working under the assumption that he's not going to be on there, and they might have to replace him with somebody else. What about you?
I think that, again, it wholly depends on the extent of the injury, and all reports seem to be pretty vague about how bad that injury is. I think there's a good possibility that he gives an indication on this show and in the weeks leading up to Survivor Series that he's going to be on the team, and then the Usos take him out on the day of Survivor Series.
That could work.
Yeah, because then you do that, and then you either have to find a last-minute replacement, which could be anybody. Like, I doubt Cody is ready yet, but if you are gearing towards that direction, and I doubt The Rock would show up as well, so probably neither of those things will be the replacement. But there might be some guy that you want to do like a one-off match with Roman at Royal Rumble. Like, realistically, I thought that was Sheamus. I think Sheamus is the next guy to challenge Roman just because of the beatdown that he suffered at the hands of the Bloodline. It makes most sense, I think, him just getting a one-off title match where he won't win but still gets the shot. But yeah, I don't know who that would necessarily be if it's not Owens. Like, if it's neither of the Paul brothers, or if it's neither of, it won't be like someone like Riddle because he's now in a lower mid-card tag feud. So
yeah, what a downgrade, right?
Yeah, Orton's injured. Cody, as far as we know, is injured.
Kind of seems like Strowman is in this World Cup thing to lead to a match with Gunther.
Yeah. And yeah, Mysterio's injured.
Mm-hmm.
So you couldn't do anything with him either. So there doesn't seem to be like a huge amount of options about who would take Owens' place. I mean, there is the also approach you could take of just essentially making it 5-on-4.
Yeah.
And still have the babyface overcome. You still have Sheamus pick up the win, and then it makes him feel even bigger if he goes into a title match with Roman.
Yeah, they could always do the thing where like the Usos and everybody, they attack Owens before the match, and then it ends up being like, there goes the advantage. Yeah. Well, they wouldn't have had an advantage. So that now the Bloodline has the advantage, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I can definitely see that be the approach, and then the reason the babyfaces get the victory is because there's a blow up between Jey Uso and Sami Zayn in the match, which causes them to lose. So there are ways you can get around it without having to find a fifth member. But obviously the ideal situation for everyone involved, because of how great Kevin Owens is that he's healthy enough to compete at Survivor Series, even in maybe a somewhat limited capacity, and still be able to perform and put on a great match for that WarGames, and eventually, whether that leads to the tag title match WrestleMania that we've predicted for a little while, or whether it goes in another direction, either way, that would be the ideal. But it all depends on how severe this injury is.
Depending on what their future plans are, which, of course, in hindsight, always informs retrospectively. If I were in the creative team and if they told me, like, look, hey, Kevin's not going to be able to go, we need to figure out something, the go-to ideas that I would have, I'd be like, look, we're kind of backing ourselves into a corner with certain people. Like, it wouldn't make sense at this point for Riddle to just be like, I guess I'll pop up and do whatever. It wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world. They've done plenty weirder things, but I would try to avoid those as much as possible. And I wouldn't just be like, I suddenly want to push Drew Gulak just because I like him. You know, that happens a lot where you see like fantasy booking people will be like, Ricochet is a 5-time champion and he wins the Royal Rumble and does this. And it's like, look, I like Ricochet too, but you got to be a little bit realistic with certain things. If I were in their shoes, I would look at that and go, the World Cup people are probably tied into the World Cup. And I don't know if I can really think of an angle to get them out of it where like Nakamura gets in here or whatever. But I do have Bray Wyatt. And if I want to get people interested and, you know, the alternative has to be equal or greater than what we're filling in, I'm much more of a fan of Kevin Owens than I am of Bray Wyatt, but the character's hot. And he's a big name and a champion. And he's been making a big deal about the idea that he doesn't want to apologize for liking the things that he's done where he's been brutal to people and all. Hey, turn into this kid. Have him be like, there's a part of me that loves that kind of violence. So this is right up my alley, and I think that I'm gonna join the WarGames match. And then you got a hook for that, and you got an interesting person in there, and then you can do Bray Wyatt versus Roman Reigns at Royal Rumble or at whatever potential international show that they're doing in mid-January. That's a rumor that's going around now, you know? I think that'd be a good way to do it.
That is definitely an approach to take. Would take a character that's very notable right now and put him into this in order to build up some immediate more buzz, like this be his first match back. Because realistically, at the moment, they're building towards his first match back being against LA Knight.
Which is not a feud that makes a whole lot of sense to me.
I mean...
LA Knight, I like him, but like he would be more so feuding with like Madcap Moss in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, it does if you just want him to get an easy win in his first feud and, you know, go up against a guy who's a good talker. Because if you're going to build it up wholly through promo battles because Bray Wyatt isn't getting super physical yet, I know he obviously headbutted the guy or did something to him on the SmackDown, but he's not getting in-ring physical as of yet. So if you need to build it up based purely on promos, I can understand going with LA Knight as the guy for that. And yeah, it would just be an easy win. There's no doubt who's going to get the victory, but it would definitely be more notable and more must-see if Bray Wyatt's first match back since returning is in this WarGames match. So, but maybe there is an argument that could, unless you are definitely going to go in the direction of Bray Wyatt and Roman, which I don't know if you should do unless you're going to have Bray win, which you wouldn't, because you're definitely doing Roman against Rock or someone at WrestleMania. Then I think that it might overshadow the whole bloodline aspect of it. So,
but then again, that's a lot of that depends on what they plan on doing with Bray, because they're being so coy about that. Like, we still don't even know if Uncle Howdy is going to be Bo Dallas and they're going to have like an Uncle Howdy versus Bray Wyatt thing, or if it's just going to be Bray's a heel and he's the Fiend again, and you know, because you could get around with having Bray against Roman and then the Uncle Howdy person pops up and then costs Bray the match. I think they could do that.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll just wait and see. Again, just the ideal circumstances that Kevin Owens is healthy enough to compete.
Yeah, that's the much simpler way. That's the one that makes most sense because you got Kevin Owens on one side, Sami Zayn on the other side. We'll figure out a little bit more when it comes to SmackDown tonight. And who knows, maybe they end up just being like, Kofi, if that's the case. But that is something to track with that. And then on the NXT side of things, wrapping us out with the rest of the hot tags of talking to points with any of the things like that. Braun Breaker retained over Von Wagner. And then we got the announcement, of course, later on, the number one contenders thing. So I'm kind of working under the assumption that Braun Breaker is going to fight Apollo Crews with the title on the line, and then other people are going to be in the number one contender spot. But maybe they go in with Apollo being in there, and maybe they don't even have the titles on the line. I don't know. You think they're going to do belts on the line plus the number one contenders, or are they just going to make that the deadline thing is the draw?
It seems like it would be quite a lot to put on the show if you're putting those two matches in, which are both going to be 25 minutes long each already, minus entrances and all the entrances to the original people coming in. Then to try and add those two world title matches, and then if you're trying to cram in like a North American title match or a tag title match as well, it just feels like you could probably get away without having the World Championships defended on that show and save them for like an end of the year special thing. Like the winner of that match gets a shot for the last NXT of the year and try and make that a big deal.
Well, if you figure half hour for those two matches piece, that's 1 hour worth of the show. And then you set aside an hour for the two video world packages. Titles and tag title, like make them 15 minutes piece. You can get 3 matches in an hour. That's only 2 hours worth of the show.
Well, no, but you haven't counted the hour-long video packages going between everything.
Yeah, you add one more match and then you count the video packages. That's 3 hours. You can do it.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's unlikely that they'll go that approach, but it'd be interesting to see who they pick to go into that, and then who then goes, because everyone seems to be, well, I'm only going based on the Indy Hartwell thing, but she's clamoring to get a match in this in the qualifier. Why isn't she just going for a title match against Mandy Rose anyway?
Right.
If that's going to be the case, so we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of options of people who can be on there, but then the question mark is who ends up actually fighting for the title. Because Braun Breaker versus Apollo Crews, that seems kind of like that makes sense because Crews beat JD McDonough, Braun Breaker beat Von Wagner. You could have Breaker, Crews, title on the line. The 5 people in the match are Wagner, McDonough, Grayson Waller, and then 2 others. Yeah, take your pick from a couple different other people. The women, though, is where it gets a little bit more confusing because that situation was Mandy Rose retaining over Alba Fire in a last woman standing match because of interference from Isla Dawn popping up from NXT UK. She finally, I guess, sorted out whatever visa issues or whatever were stopping her. And she is now part of the NXT roster. One of the few confirmations we've gotten of people that are not fired from NXT UK. We might get more of that next week because next week is going to be the debut of Scripps. So that's a thing. Yeah, I mean, you can't really do Mandy Rose versus Alba Fire again because why would you do that? It's the last woman standing. We already did it. No only thing. I don't think Isla Dawn makes sense to go up against Mandy Rose. So Zoe Stark's feuding with Nikita Lyons. I can't picture the 2 of them against Mandy at this point. I don't know. But I like the idea that Isla Dawn popped up and did this. I'm even more of a fan of that Mandy Rose retained instead of it just going to Alba Fire. I know that you're probably going to disagree with me on that one.
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be Alba Fire, but just Mandy Rose is just holding on to this title now. It's been over a year. It's gotten so unbelievably stale. And yeah, it's gone to the point also that I've now started to refer to her as the Honky Tonk Mandy, which is she only wins by some kind of interference. Like she doesn't win, people win the match for her. Like it was Halloween Havoc, it was Toxic Attraction distracting Alba Fire, and this one it was Isla Dawn when Toxic Attraction weren't even available. So it's not like she's a strong champion. And I think that the likelihood is that I don't know who will be the participants in this Iron Survivor match, but I think it's likely that Roxanne Perez will be the winner and be the one to challenge and beat Mandy Rose.
Yeah, I kind of think it's heading in that direction now too. Just going back to something that's happened months ago and circling around to do it all over again. But the Zoe Stark promo happened. They had that whole situation go down. Booker T had a contract signing between Wesley and Carmelo Hayes. Malik Blade explained why he wears his sweater vests. That's character development, at least. One thing I thought was funny was Javier Bernal had said that he was totally down for a fight, and he'll fight Axiom or Ilya Dragunov or someone from Gallus. All the people that are like suspended and injured and whatnot. I thought that was kind of fun. And we are back to calling Sangha and Veer Mahan into share. Confirmation about that.
And as I predicted as well, they're trying to get the Virgin. They're trying to seduce the Virgin into getting the bar sold. A bar that he doesn't own.
Yeah.
But apparently seducing him will get the bar somehow. And they're also doing more progression with the whole Duke Hudson is apparently babyface, but clearly isn't babyface in Chase University.
I do like that stuff. The Duke Hudson overacting and everything, and Thea Hale being like super energetic and all. I think that's one of the most fun things that they've been doing.
But yeah, well, there's not really much to the NXT thing. It was just an episode of NXT, but we'll see whether they end up doing qualifying matches or whether they just announce who's going to be in this Iron Survivor match, or these Iron Survivor matches, should I say?
I'm assuming that they're probably going to just flat out announce about half the people.
Yeah, they don't have enough people to do qualifying match.
Yeah, some
Well,
of them
on
they
the women's
could.
side anyway.
Like, I could picture that Cora Jade goes up against Wendy Chu in a qualifier instead of the both just being added in there.
I
And
think they'll both be
maybe
in it. I think they'll both be in it.
they might be, and maybe
5
Nikita
women?
and Zoe, maybe they end up settling it that way, or maybe they just have a match on the card, you know.
I think they're going to be separated. I think that they're going to be separated out. I think Isla Dawn and Alba Fire are going to be separated out in their own feud. And if it was gone to my head right now, the 5 people would be Roxanne, Indy Hartwell, Cora, Wendy Chu, and then possibly put a member of Toxic Attraction in there.
Or even, you know, I mean, they could do the Fallon Henley and Kiana James. They could be a qualifier.
That'd be fun.
That's a feud. So
yeah, I guess so.
Or they just go, hey, Saray, or something like that. And who knows? But yeah, they're working their way towards setting up that deadline card and everything. And next week we'll have more information about that. We'll have potentially the debut of Scripps in some way. Potentially Dijakovic will be settled in there. So there's some stuff going on that's worth paying attention to. But that's basically what happened this week in the world of AEW and WWE and some of the outsider stuff. Maybe we're missing something. Maybe we're not. I don't know. If we are, let us know in the comments below. And tell us what you thought about all these things. And in the meantime, go ahead and follow us all over the place at Smark Out Moment, including the Twitter is still currently up last time I checked. Maybe it won't be tomorrow. We don't know how Twitter is working these days. But I am looking into trying to get something set up with Mastodon. I have no clue what the hell that is really, but that's like an extra social media thing, and there's like a specific server for like journalists or whatever. So I was like, yeah, I'll look into that. Maybe sort that out. But you got to wait. You're on like a wait list or something now. So maybe more information about that down the line. If that ends up happening, you'll find that over on my link tree, and all those link tree things you can find at amangotree.com or anthonymango.com. And I might be tweaking some of those other things too. I'm going to, I have one for like a link tree for just Smark Out Moment specifically and Fanboys Anonymous, but I just really didn't do anything with them. So maybe I'll do that down the line. We'll see. And if you follow all those accounts and you follow Fanboys Anonymous and you hit up the Patreon and everything for that, then go check out our Mount Rushmore of Spider-Man villains that we took care of yesterday. That was something that Rob and Callum and I did just kind of on a whim. Did a whole tier list breakdown of about like 30 plus something characters or so. Talk about some of those weird ones like Big Wheel and Hypno Hustler, and some of the main ones like Green Goblin and Dr. Octopus and all. So if you're interested in Spider-Man, check that out. If you want more content like that, let me know, because we will definitely try to do more of that stuff in the future. And then just stay tuned to smarkoutmoment.com and everything else that's happening in that spectrum to see what's going on with the pro wrestling stuff. And follow me at Tony Mango, and follow Callum and check out what he's up to.
Yeah, for as long as is available now to do so, you can follow me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. Get in while you can. I guess is the whole incentive there. And then after that I'll be pretty much on no social media platforms. So you just follow me while you can. I might tweet one thing, who knows, at some point. And then you can check out all the stuff on Smark Out Moment, as Tony says, but make a beeline for the Power Rankings, which is my weekly contribution to the website, where I take from every wrestler in the WWE spectrum. I rank the top 10 people for the week based on my perspective. And yeah, so you can track that along, see who's up in the table that I create for who's there most throughout the majority of the year. I think the Bloodline is top because there's 5 of them and they usually do well. So that makes sense. And then you can also check out the Fantasy League, also at wwefantasyleague.com, where it's myself, Rob, and Tony drafted our team of wrestlers months and months ago, and we're about the halfway stage now, maybe even past the halfway stage, and just see who gets the most points, which team collects the most points between now and WrestleMania. And with Survivor Series coming up, that'll be a time where where things will get mixed up a little bit, if I remember to ask for predictions this time.
Alrighty, everyone. Well, that is it for this episode of the Hot Tags. I want to thank you for listening to this. I want to thank you for following us tomorrow with the Full Gear pay-per-view point post show coming up immediately after the event ends. So that'll be at, 4:30 in the morning or so based off of previous AEW events. But if you check out the Megamaniacs on Facebook, we'll have our discussion thread there. It's got the link to the eventual post-show video chat that we'll have up on this channel. You can do the super chats. You can hang out live, talk about what just happened and all. We'll be breaking that down, and we'll see you then, hopefully. If we're not, then we'll see you whenever we click on whatever the next thing is. But adios for now, everybody. This has been another Smark out moment, and we are being counted out.